The New York Times is reporting that the helicopter may have been flying outside of its approved flight path and higher than it should have been. We'll get much more to that. Let's get to the videos. The first video we want to show you, the bright light that you see at the top is the American Airlines jet as it approached the runway. Then you see the helicopter flying directly into the frame and directly into the plane. Both aircraft immediately then crashing down into the Potomac River.
How did an American Airlines plane and a Blackhawk helicopter end up in a tragic crash while the plane was attempting to land on runway 33?
Oh, JEJE.
Can you feel the vibe?
It's JEJE Vibe, 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 Vibe.
Oh, JEJE Vibe.
It's JEJE Vibe.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to JEJE Vibe.
We're back.
You know I got the amazing queen with me.
Thanks, my love.
Today, we have to talk about it.
The plane had departed from Wichita Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport in Kansas earlier that evening. A PSA Airlines aircraft operated under American Airlines and identified as Flight AA5342 collided midair with a military Blackhawk helicopter at approximately 9 p.m. on Wednesday, January 29, 2025. The tragic incident occurred as the plane was making its final approach toward Reagan-Washington National Airport in Arlington, Virginia. American Airlines confirmed that 64 people were aboard the jet, 60 passengers and 4 crew members, while 3 soldiers were aboard the military helicopter. This plane's radio transponder stopped transmitting about 2,400 feet, which is around 730 meters short of the runway, roughly over the middle of the river. This has marked the first major U.S. commercial crash in more than 15 years.
You know, it's sad what we've been hearing when it comes to
The plane crashes.
crazy. This is crazy. We heard about the news when it comes to American Airlines colliding with a chopper.
The New York Times is reporting that the helicopter may have been flying outside of its approved flight path and higher than it should have been. We'll get much more to that. Let's get to the videos. The first video we want to show you, the bright light that you see at the top is the American Airlines jet as it approached the runway. Then you see the helicopter flying directly into the frame and directly into the plane. Both aircraft immediately then crashing down into the Potomac River.
That was crazy.
Crazy.
About 67 people poofed.
On board the plane, on board the chopper. The remains have now been removed from the water and given to the medical examiner for a full identification. 66 of the 67 remains have now been positively identified. They will be handed over to the victims' families. You mentioned the efforts out on the water. The NTSB, the Coast Guard, the Army Corps of Engineers, police and fire divers have now been removing the wreckage. They have managed to recover the tail as well as the wings, as well as the fuselage. They've been working on the cockpit from the regional jet. That's been the focus over the last couple of days. Most of that is now up and out of the water from the regional jet. They will then quickly turn their focus to the Blackhawk helicopter and trying to lift it up and out of the water. Separately, now, we have the NTSB saying that air traffic control tapes revealed that crash occurred at 300 feet. Why is that important? Because, of course, the chopper was not supposed to be flying higher than 200 feet. So if the crash occurred at 300 feet, the question is, why was that chopper at least 100 feet above where it should have been? They want to still look at the black box from the chopper. They want to read that data. They have the black box, but they first want to do a full forensics analysis on the Blackhawk helicopter itself before they then go back and compare and look at their data from the Blackhawk. So it has been a very busy few days.
The families, condolences. This is crazy. So there's a whole lot of pointing fingers when it comes to who is going to be responsible for this. The investigation is still going on. But this is crazy.
Crazy.
Like, this is the last thing you want to have in your mind when you have to travel.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and we had an episode about this when it comes to Boeing now.
Facts. There's also another air crash in Philadelphia where a jet. Whew, crazy scenes.
Crazy.
Like, this is mad. The plane that happens to be an ambulance transporting someone who is sick or in medical need of attention.
Emergency.
Emergency attention. Just went all the way. Phew!
Yep.
The aircraft, known for its speed and efficiency, was designed to operate in various weather conditions. Takeoff occurred at approximately 6:07 p.m., but shortly after becoming airborne, the jet encountered a technical issue. Weather conditions at the time included light rain and fog, reducing visibility to about 5 to 7 miles. From the top angle, we can see the experienced pilot made a hard descending left-hand turn with no correctional input. This shows the pilot was likely confused or disoriented once entering the cloud and rain. While modern jets are built to handle adverse weather, unforeseen mechanical failures or environmental factors can still pose significant risks. Tragically, just moments into the flight, the aircraft lost control and crashed near Roosevelt Mall, creating a huge explosion of smoke. The aircraft in question was a Jet Rescue Air Ambulance, a medical flight operated by a specialized air ambulance company. This particular Learjet 55 registered as XA-UCI and owned by the company. The aircraft was on a critical medical transport mission, highlighting the vital roles such flights play in emergency healthcare. According to the company, there were 6 people on board at the time of the crash, 4 crew members and 2 passengers, a child patient and their attending caregiver. These air ambulances are typically equipped with advanced medical equipment and staffed by trained professionals to ensure critical patients receive continuous care while in transit. In this video, you can see the plane dropping fast, almost like a missile, before crashing and erupting into a massive fireball.
Like an asteroid. This is crazy.
Crazy.
Like, this is crazy. The angles of this whole impact was crazy.
A new dash cam video is giving a look at the chaotic moments a small jet crashed into a Philadelphia neighborhood on Friday. That plane was carrying a child patient, her mother, and 4 others. The plane crashed just 40 seconds after taking off, killing at least 7 people and injuring 24 more.
They're going to look at weather. Was there medical concerns? Was there technical or mechanical issues on the airplane? All factors that, even though this crash was so devastating, there are remains, whether it's the engines, the wings, that they can look at and get answers to what took place here.
Several people remain hospitalized. Investigators are hoping the cockpit voice recorders, which were found 8 feet underground, will help lead to some much-needed answers.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! What the hell? What the hell?
About 7 lives were lost.
They're still trying to access the damages.
Crazy.
Coming on, I guess, on air now saying that, people should not touch anything.
Yo. The way that plane dropped, man. The speed. Oh my God. Look like a movie shit.
Looked like the plane just stopped all of a sudden and just dropped.
Phew. Condolences to the families. So all of this plane incident has just been coming out on the timeline lately. There's another one that happened right now. Even before all of this, there's a plane crash that happened in South Korea.
Flight 7C2216 crashed. This South Korean airline was granted permission to land from the south on runway 1 northward. But control tower cautions against bird activity, so the aircraft made a slight deviation in flight path. The pilot declares Mayday after it hit a couple of birds, and it was instructed to make a go around and land on runway 19 southward. It was at this moment the airplane encountered another problem with the landing gear, which did not open. Finally, the plane had to make a belly landing with what was supposedly a landing gear failure because it hit in the middle of the runway and crashed into the elevated local laser antenna and concrete, erupting into a huge fireball, while the tail section remained intact.
So it's not just in America, it's all over. Like, there's so many news of plane crashes happening between 2024 and this year, and 25.
Makes you wonder, is it safe to fly by air anymore
Like,
these days?
What are we doing? What are we doing? This is crazy. I think we should have passed this point of, oh man, I don't know. So guys, let us know what you guys think about all of these plane crashes happening. What's your take? Drop it in the comments. You know it's JEJE Vibe. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe. See you in the next one.
Bye bye now.
JEJE Vibe.
The aircraft, known for its speed and efficiency, was designed to operate in various weather conditions. Takeoff occurred at approximately 6:07 p.m., but shortly after becoming airborne, the jet encountered a technical issue. Weather conditions at the time included light rain and fog, reducing visibility to about 5 to 7 miles. From the top angle, we can see the experienced pilot made a hard descending left-hand turn with no correctional input. This shows the pilot was likely confused or disoriented once entering the cloud and rain. While modern jets are built to handle adverse weather, unforeseen mechanical failures or environmental factors can still pose significant risks. Tragically, just moments into the flight, the aircraft lost control and crashed near Roosevelt Mall, creating a huge explosion of smoke. The aircraft in question was a Jet Rescue Air Ambulance, a medical flight operated by a specialized air ambulance company. This particular Learjet 55 registered as XA-UCI and owned by the company. The aircraft was on a critical medical transport mission, highlighting the vital roles such flights play in emergency healthcare. According to the company, there were 6 people on board at the time of the crash: 4 crew members and 2 passengers, a child patient and their attending caregiver. These air ambulances are typically equipped with advanced medical equipment and staffed by trained professionals to ensure critical patients receive continuous care while in transit. In this video, you can see the plane dropping fast, almost like a missile, before crashing and erupting into a massive fireball. The explosion was so intense because the jet was fueled up for a long flight to Mexico. With full tanks, the impact causing a much bigger fireball than usual. If you take a closer look, the plane appears to be nose down, falling at high speed, almost like a bullet. And with all that fuel on board, the explosion was even more devastating than expected.
Seasons Diner here on Cotman Avenue, who was hit by a piece of the jet's debris that came through a diner window. He is okay, the staff tells Fox 29 News tonight. A warning, the man in the black hat is facing the window, 4 booths over from the window, and facing the direction of the jet's crash, a half-mile away. At 6:07 p.m., what's believed to be the regulator off one of the jet's oxygen tanks I photographed here Friday night, found outside the McDonald's next door to the diner. It hits him in the head, knocks his hat off, as he and other customers stayed down, crawling behind the salad bar for safety, thinking gunfire came through the window, until they learned just seconds later that the jet crashed nearby. Staff says he wiped some blood off his head and then walked to an ambulance to be checked out after. Tonight, some of the police working around the clock at the scene were among the first customers coming back to the Four Seasons, now one of the fortunate first to reopen here along Cotman Avenue since, as they hope to provide some familiar comfort to a neighborhood now in desperate need of a whole lot of comforting right now.
I come here almost every day, 9 to 5. I'm a field rep salesman, and fortunately yesterday I didn't go into the field, but coming back today, this place is unrecognizable. Everything that was here, the community, everything, I can tell everybody's impacted by it, and I just hope that everybody's okay and we can get through this as soon as possible.
Right now it's just a lot going. The city right now, it feels the impact. I'm actually trying to check on my cousin. She's on one of these back blocks I'm trying to get to. They got everything blocked off. It's hurting me. And I never heard from her yet. So I just want to make sure she's okay. My heart is racing. There's a lot going on, a lot of emotions.
A lot of people screaming, kids crying, just pieces everywhere on fire. Cars on fire, homes on fire. You know, people, I had a friend that he couldn't go back to his house because he actually lives right there, exactly where the crash happened. And he wasn't allowed back in his home till almost midnight. And he had to be escorted, and they were without power and without electricity pretty much all night. And they probably still are now without any power or heat or anything.
Just in the minute like that, something just happened like that, and then unfortunate, you know, people lose their lives and stuff like that. We don't control these, but it's very sad.
If you take a close-up shot, you can clearly see the Blackhawk helicopter traveling at an alarmingly high speed directly towards the plane, a moment of impending danger captured in stark detail. According to reports, the situation unfolded due to apparent confusion on the part of the Blackhawk pilot. He was seemingly unaware of the presence of a second aircraft in the vicinity, which ultimately led to a critical misjudgment. When the flight controller radioed in, asking if the pilot had identified Flight 5342, the pilot confidently confirmed that he had visual contact. However, the plane he was referring to wasn't Flight 5342, it was a completely different aircraft flying above his position. This misidentification proved costly. The pilot, certain he was operating safely, continued his course. Tragically, he ended up flying directly into the path of an oncoming aircraft. The sequence of events highlights the immense complexity and risks of aviation, where even small communication errors or lapses in situational awareness can lead to dangerous, life-threatening outcomes.
Surveillance video from the airport and showing very same helicopter moving along the river as the plane approaches the runway at DCA, and then the collision and the explosion and into the Potomac River. Horrifying. Both now to the investigation into what led to that horrific crash. Both of the so-called black boxes have been recovered from the commercial jet, are being examined and analyzed. Those black boxes are going to be key to pinpointing what exactly happened in the moments before the deadly crash.
From an aerial perspective, it is evident that Flight A5342 was approaching the airport from the south, descending over the scenic Potomac River. This area is known for its proximity to several iconic landmarks, such as the Pentagon, located nearby in Pentagon City. To the north, one can spot the striking dome of the United States Capitol building, a symbol of American democracy. The Potomac River, which encircles the airport and much of Arlington, serves as a natural boundary and offers breathtaking views for arriving flights. However, this area is also densely trafficked, both by air and on the ground, adding to the complexity of air traffic management in the region. American Airlines Flight 5342, which we'll refer to as the landing flight, was on its final approach to runway 33. At this stage, called short final, the aircraft was mere moments from landing, flying at an altitude of about 400 feet. This is the most critical phase of landing, where every second counts and pilots are laser-focused on safely bringing the plane down. At the same time, an Army Blackhawk helicopter, identified as PAC-25, was reportedly on a possible training flight. It was flying perpendicular to the flight path of Flight 5342, following the course of the Potomac River. The Potomac River is a designated flight corridor for helicopters, and it's common to see aircraft like this operating in the area. The key difference between the two aircraft in this scenario was their operating rules. The Blackhawk helicopter, PAC-25, was flying under visual flight rules. This means it was required to rely on visual observation of its surroundings to avoid other aircraft. The landing flight 5342 was operating under instrument flight rules, which give it priority over VFR flights in controlled airspace. This system assumes that VFR aircraft will actively maintain visual separation to avoid conflicts. Moments before the collision, the air traffic control tower at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport called PAC-25 to confirm whether they had the other aircraft in sight. PAC-25 responded that they did. At first glance, this seems like an acknowledgement that they were aware of Flight 5342's presence and were taking steps to avoid it. However, it now seems likely that PAC-25 had mistakenly identified a different aircraft, possibly a departing flight from the same airport, and believed that was the other aircraft referred to by the tower. Tragically, PAC-25 may not have realized that Flight 5342 was descending directly into its path. This misidentification could have led to the Blackhawk failing to adjust its course in time to avoid a collision. This is what appears to have happened based on the available information. It's a heartbreaking incident that raises questions about how such misunderstandings can occur and what safety measures can prevent them in the future. The passenger plane broke into multiple pieces and sank several feet into the river. Meanwhile, the helicopter ended up landing upside down on the water. Regarding the rescue mission, the main challenge is access. The water they're working in is about 8 feet deep, which is roughly 2.5 meters. On top of that, the conditions are tough. There's strong wind, chunks of ice floating around, which obstructs rescue workers. We also have audio from air traffic control that has been published online, capturing the moments as the two aircraft approach each other. In the recording, we can hear a conversation. It appears to involve the air traffic controller, with P standing for priority air transport, the helicopter, and CRJ referring to the passenger plane. The response seems to come from the helicopter, but something goes terribly wrong. The two aircraft continue to move closer to each other until they crash, and there was no response from the other side.
I think we're really going to find out once forensic scientists are able to analyze the cockpit voice recorder and the airplane data recorder. Then we'll really know what's happened. But based on the preliminary materials we have, the conversation with the air traffic controller, apparently there were other airline pilots taxiing to the runway at Reagan, and they said they witnessed the whole thing. I'm sure the FAA and the NTSB are going to want to interview them. So there are a lot of pieces here that need to be put together, and they will. It's just going to take time.
Was this accident preventable? The answer is probably. I can tell you that the airspace in and around Washington, D.C. is the most restricted, regulated, controlled, complex airspace in the country. There are several layers of security rings around Washington, D.C. ever since 9/11. And that accident happened within a couple miles of Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, which is inside what's called the flight restricted zone. Any aircraft flying in that area is under direct and specific control of air traffic control, including that helicopter and that airliner. So if it's, the answer is yes, it was probably preventable, and that's exactly what the NTSB will uncover in their investigation. The NTSB is going to have incredible amounts of data to analyze. They're going to recover the aircraft pieces, the cockpit voice recorders, the flight data recorders. They'll have the radar images. They'll have the multiple video angles, I'm sure, from around that part of DC and Northern Virginia. So they're going to have ample evidence. I doubt that they're going to come up with an unknown cause. They're going to know exactly what all the communications were, the speed and altitude of the helicopter, the approach path of the airliner. The military training is, bar none, exquisitely great. It's excellent training that the military pilots receive in all branches of the service. So I would probably encourage listeners not to cast an assessment on 500 or 1,000 hours of training. That training is top-notch, whether it's helicopter or fixed wing or jet or Army or Navy or Air Force.
Our investigative team will be on scene as long as it takes in order to obtain all of the perishable evidence and all of the fact-finding that is needed to bring us to a conclusion of probable cause. Our mission is to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, and to recommend changes to prevent it from happening again. Since we're just beginning our investigation, we don't have a great deal of information to share right now. We will keep you informed by giving regular updates as we learn more. Our intention is to have a preliminary report within 30 days, and the final report will be issued once we've completed all of our fact-finding and investigation.
As part of any investigation, we look at the human, the machine, and the environment. So we will look at all the humans that were involved in this accident. Again, we will look at the aircraft, we will look at the helicopter, we will look at the environment in which they were operating in. That is standard in any part of our investigation. I'll turn it back.
Chair, can I ask you, has the flight data recorder been recovered yet? And what is the difficulty
in a water disaster like this, which presents a very difficult environment for your investigators and the people out of the water?
Well, the question was on the flight data recorders. And we have not recovered the flight data recorders yet. We know they're there. They are underwater. This is not unusual for the NTSB. We have many times recovered flight data recorders in water.
That has been cited by the New York Times indicating that the controller... And what about the ATC tapes?
So the question was about black boxes, which are referred to as black boxes, which are typically orange. We have not recovered any of the boxes involved yet. We feel comfortable and confident that we will be able to. Right now, recovery of life is probably the most important in those that were involved. I mean, there are still ongoing recovery efforts involving the fatalities involved, along with some debris is coming out as well. We will make sure that that perishable evidence is maintained. We have a great process for that. We will probably have more than one black box, so to speak. It's our understanding that the Sikorsky helicopter is equipped with some form of recording devices, and those will be read either by the DoD.
An Airlines flight and a U.S. Army helicopter here in Washington, D.C. The bodies of all 67 victims have been recovered as crews work to fully recover the aircraft debris submerged in the Potomac River. Many of those killed were members of the figure skating community. U.S. Figure Skating sharing a moving video paying tribute to the 28 athletes, coaches, and family members who died in the crash. Their heartbreaking black and white video full of young smiling faces and those who loved them. ABC News transportation reporter Sam Sweeney joins me now live for more. And Sam, you see that video and it really tugs at your heart. But what do we know about now that all these bodies have been recovered and as crews are still working to clear that wreckage?
Well, this has certainly been a difficult task for those crews dealing with this. They are seeing the human element. We keep talking about a plane crash, but they are seeing bodies attached to this mangled wreckage, and they've had to work with that now for almost a week. It has been really difficult for them, and the fire chief saying that they will get counseling for the rest of their lives. But now that this stage of the investigation and recovery has ended, the families can begin to heal, get these bodies back to their homes, and begin these funerals. We saw one flight attendant go back to Charlotte this morning, or overnight, I should say. But this is a long process, but it will certainly now make the job a bit easier for these recovery teams as they move the wreckage out. Every time they found human remains, they had to stop working out of respect for the dead and properly bring those bodies on board those barges and get them to the medical examiner. Now they can work a bit faster. It's not been easy out there with all of the wind and the tides, but once they get that American Airlines plane out of the water, they will then move to that helicopter, which is so crucial in this investigation.
Well, and the NTSB said that it needs additional information to verify data retrieved from the Blackhawk helicopter, but it has to wait until it's removed from the Potomac. Why is that, and where does that process stand?
The black box on the helicopter is not as sophisticated as the black box on that American Airlines plane, and they need that black box to help create that timeline and get all of the data out, including the altitude. There's a discrepancy. The airplane was at 325 feet, but the tower believed that the helicopter was at 200 feet, and we will only be able to tell the true altitude of that helicopter at the time of collision when they get that data out of the helicopter black box. Now they hope to bring that helicopter up to the surface and onto a barge before the end of this week.
Aren't you? And lastly, Sam, we're learning that President Trump spoke with the CEO of American Airlines yesterday. What do we know about that conversation?
The president, wanted to thank all the team members over at American Airlines, and, American Airlines wanted to thank the president for, cutting that helicopter traffic out of the area around Reagan National Airport. This has been a back and forth, and they are grateful for that. But this was really, a touch-base conversation with the CEO of American.
Interestingly, in the past 2 months, there have been multiple major plane crashes. On January 28, 2025, an $85 million F-35 jet crashed in Alaska. The following day, on January 29, an American Airlines plane collided with a Blackhawk helicopter. Then, on January 31, 2025, a medical plane went down for unknown reasons. In addition to these recent incidents, South Korea experienced a plane crash on December 29, 2024, when an aircraft struck an antenna. Just days earlier, on December 25, 2024, an Azerbaijani plane was hit by a Russian Panzer missile. All of these tragic events occurred within 45 days, so let's study these plane crashes further. Another round of questions. Why did the F-35 crash again? For the third time in less than a year, a U.S. Air Force F-35 Lightning II, a stealth fighter with a staggering $82 million price tag, has crashed. The latest incident occurred on Tuesday, the 28th, 2025 at 12:49 p.m. during a training exercise at Alaska's Aviation Air Force Base. The pilot managed to eject safely, but the jet was completely destroyed, with its wreckage left burning inside the base's perimeter. This isn't just a string of bad luck, it's starting to look like a pattern. Back in May 2024, an F-35 crashed in New Mexico after a refueling stop, leaving the pilot seriously injured. Before that, in September 2023, a Marine Corps F-35B went down in South Carolina after the pilot ejected mid-flight due to a malfunction. The jet, shockingly, continued flying unmanned for 11 minutes before crashing into a field. Now in January 2025, the Alaska crash adds another chapter to this growing list of mishaps, sparking even louder concerns about the jet's safety. Why is this happening? Cold weather seems to be a recurring theme when it comes to F-35 issues. Alaska's freezing temperatures have caused trouble for these jets before. In 2018, cold air penetrated the aircraft's systems during landing, overwhelming battery heaters and triggering false alarms. Pilots had to make emergency landings because of this, and Lockheed Martin claimed to have fixed the issue by updating the software to ignore the cold's effects. But with temperatures at Aviation dipping below minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit this week, it's fair to ask if this problem has come back to haunt the jet. Investigators haven't confirmed anything yet, but the Arctic climate definitely makes it a prime suspect. The F-35's cutting-edge technology is another factor that raises questions. Its cockpit is filled entirely with digital screens and software, no traditional analog dials. If you look at the F-16 cockpit, it has a mix of both analog and digital outputs. While this setup offers advanced capabilities, it also leaves the aircraft vulnerable to glitches. In the South Carolina crash of 2023, the pilot's helmet display flickered out during a storm, leaving him disoriented. Following the manual, he ejected when the jet seemed uncontrollable. Later, investigators determined the jet was still flyable, but vague wording in the manual didn't give the pilot much confidence in the moment. Finally, there's the challenge of balancing human and machine. Even experienced pilots can find themselves struggling with the F-35's complex systems. In the Alaska crash, the pilot reported an in-flight malfunction before ejecting. Was it a sensor error, a mechanical failure, or simply the aircraft's technology overwhelming the person in the cockpit? Until the investigation concludes, we're left with more questions than answers. Azerbaijan Airlines flight J28243 was en route from the Azerbaijani capital, Baku, to Grozny, the capital of the Chechen Republic in Russia, when it encountered a critical situation mid-flight. The aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing approximately 3 kilometers, which is around 1.8 miles away from Aktau, a city located on the eastern shore of the Caspian Sea in Kazakhstan. The incident resulted in the plane crashing on the opposite shore of the Caspian Sea, after what was described as an emergency maneuver. The nearest Russian airport along the plane's intended flight path, located in Makhachkala,